Greetings, conquerors. We're not going to waste any time. We're going to get right to part two of our conversation with Brother Craig Bardo and Brother John Drake. We pray that last week's conversation was inspiring and enlightening and all these things. But if you enjoyed last week, you ain't seen nothing yet. Ladies and gentlemen, TBR Live. Interesting conversation with interesting people. Let's go.
Y'all this, and then we can get into some fun stuff. I've always had one fundamental problem with politics. I'm a foundation type of a guy, and my position is, if the branches have issues, look at the tree. Whatever's going on with the tree, if you solve that, you can probably fix everything. So my problem with politics is this. So you get to the presidency, right? You get to whoever the final two candidates are, right? And everybody has issues with both of them. And most people will openly say, I'm essentially voting for the lesser of the two evils. My question is, why does it have to be? In other words, if you get to the two candidates and everybody says, you know what, we don't want either one of these, let's just start this whole thing over. Can that happen? Or do you just have to accept what's in front of you?
So I withheld my vote from Obama and from Biden, from Hillary Clinton, because I did not support anything that they stood for. Not even the first time with Obama. I didn't vote for Obama the first time because I had a sense of who he was.
Okay.
Not that it, was he the lesser of two evils as far as Hillary Clinton was concerned? Absolutely. But he was, oh my God, yeah, she's horrible. But he was exactly who I thought he was. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
And so I never voted for Obama. And I have been justified in that from my perspective. Joe Biden is a straight up racist, always has been. How are you going to have me voting for a racist? He actually demonstrated that to us. If you're not black, what did he say? Just all kind of stupidness. And then you got Chucks and Pearls Harris, who ain't who has been an incarcerator, a proud incarcerator of black men. Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not voting for her. I'm not doing that. I don't care if she ski-wees or went to Howard or any of that. That doesn't matter to me. So I couldn't vote for her. I haven't voted for a Democrat for a long time.
Gotcha.
Hey guys, I was off for a second because I went through a dead spot. And the last thing I heard, and I'm sure it was pretty good, Craig brought up Black Lives Matter, and I missed a whole lot of stuff after that.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
I think that in retrospect, that will go down as one of the biggest missed opportunities of a generation.
Big scam.
And I think that the one of the things with the 1960s civil rights movement, and it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but the organization from the Dr. King and from Joseph Lowery and other Black clergy was impeccable. And when the churches got closed down, there was just really a lot of just mob rule out there, and you didn't have any focus, any agenda that I could tell about. And so, yeah, but that's a whole, I'm sure Craig covered that pretty well. So that's just my little 2 cents.
Okay. My question that I asked Craig, and I want to get your perspective on this as well. So I was telling Craig, I have a gripe about politics. And my gripe is simply this. If you get to the final two candidates, if the people don't like either one of them, can you just say we're not accepting either one of them and we're starting over? Is that something that can be done?
Well, you know, people and growing up, so I'm not even going to say when I say people, I don't mean other people, including myself. For a long time,
Did we lose you again? Must have hit a dead spot. I bet that was good too.
Yeah,
I think it's.
I can hear that. I wanted to hear it.
Okay, we can hear you again, sir. Keep going.
Oh, you missed it. Oh, I'm sorry. So there are more than two parties, and you know, I'm of the opinion if somebody comes up to me and they want us to sign a petition for ballot access, whether they're a libertarian or a socialist or whatever, I'll sign it because I want more people on the debate. I want more people on the stage. I want more voices. And until we do that, people are gonna, you know, we're just gonna get the same thing over and over again.
Horrible stuff.
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point. Because typically what will happen is people will say that I'm voting for someone and I'm gonna essentially vote for the lesser of the two evils. And so my question is, why not, if you're under the impression that you got two evils in front of you, why don't you just get rid of the evils and just start the process again and do something else? Is that something that can actually, could we actually do that?
I think the way that we can do it from a electoral standpoint is to do what John says, to either vote for a third party or just walk away.
Okay.
You know, I don't think that there's any opportunity for us to alter the rules, at least not from a minority standpoint. Black folks are not going to be able to, you know, to say to everyone else, hey, look, we're not going to do this. Now, there is another process called ranked force voting that some states are adopting, which is to say that, you know, everybody registers their vote, and then the top vote getters are retained, you know, like the top 6 are retained, the bottom 3 or 4 are eliminated if you have 10. And then you keep going until you're satisfied. And so that, you know, that would incorporate the candidates that John is talking about, from libertarians to socialists to neo-Nazis or whatever, right? And then you would be able to produce probably something more akin to what people are wanting in their politics, that have the kind of range of issue coverage that you would want to see that we're missing right now, right? Because right now we're getting some plain BS from the duopoly party, the Republicrats. That's my position. Can you hear John?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
And yeah, I'm here. One other thing I would say, and I agree with what Craig is saying. One thing is also just a lot of this requires a lot of education, things that I didn't understand growing up, and you're not taught in school necessarily. But when you understand how the electoral college system works, you know, people say, "Oh, you're voting for a third party. You're throwing away your vote." No, I used to live in Tennessee, which is a deeply red state. I live in Alabama, which is a deeply red state. My vote for a Democrat or a Republican in either of those states in a presidential election means nothing. You know, I can participate in the primary and try to get a better candidate at that point. But in the general election, it doesn't mean a thing.
Great point, John.
And so unless you're in a battleground state, choose who you want to vote for. you know. But a lot of people just don't understand that.
They don't understand it. That's a great point, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, that certainly is. I didn't even consider that. Wow, while I was asking the question. Okay, so let's shift gears just a little bit. So I believe both of you guys are spiritual guys. At least that's how I perceive it.
Thank you.
And so
Perfect.
it's okay. In scripture, we understand that perfect means mature, not the guy who doesn't make mistakes. So you might be closer to it than you think. But don't worry about it. So
some of us might be spiritual on New Year's Eve, with a little bit too much spirit. But anyway.
Different spirit, but okay, I get you. I get the point. I totally get you. So all of this going on, the body of Christ, who we are. Do we have a voice in any of this?
Ooh.
Do we? I mean, everybody, every group I can think of has a position and a voice in all of this. The one that I don't hear very much from, and I'm talking about in the truest sense of what that means, is the body of Christ. So what do y'all think about it?
Go ahead, John.
Well, one thing I will say is one of my favorite verses in the Bible is God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of love and of power and of a strong mind. And to quote Yoda from Star Wars, I sense much fear in this one, is that they're people are driven by fear, and we have what I call fear porn. No matter what the subject is, whether it's crime, terrorism, COVID, whatever, they want people to be as fearful as possible.
That's true.
And so, like I saw somebody commenting on an Adventist chat line. Oh, this is recent, and I assume they're vaccinated. I mean, we're not getting into that, but they were saying, "Oh, I wish I could go back to church, but I'm so afraid." Well, that's a problem. You have to go out your house. You go to the grocery store. At some point, whatever it is, we have to live our lives. I remember after 9/11, initially, I was so afraid that, a terrorist is going to jump up out of a bush and shoot me, like a lot of Americans. I learned a lot about what really happened, and we won't get into that. But even just from the standpoint of living our lives, it's either you believe that God has the ultimate say in when you're going to die, or you don't. And if you believe that, then live your life. And when it comes to politics, a lot of people, or economics or whatever, a lot of people are driven by fear. And I have to say this, I'm in the group, okay? I have at times not made the right decision because I was afraid of what somebody thought or whatever. And I've let people talk me out of what I knew was the right thing. Simple example, but a capitalist example. Let's talk about capitalism a little bit. When I was in my early 20s, I saw, Apple stock had taken a beating, right? And IBM stock had taken a beating. But I believed in my heart both those companies were coming back. And so I just kind of said, when we were having dinner at lunch at one of the epidemiologists functions, that's the group I worked for. I just kind of said off the cuff, really, it would be a good idea to invest in some Apple stock or some IBM stock. And everybody's like, oh, no, you're crazy. You only buy Microsoft. You don't know what you're talking about. Da, 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 da. Well, if I had bought myself just $1,000 of Apple stock back in 1993, where would I be right now? Yes, I wouldn't be working. I wouldn't be late to be on this call because I was working a third job. But we're afraid. we're afraid to step out and take the risk. One thing, now here's a positive. In the Black community, I saw recently that during this pandemic, there's been a great spike in Black business ownership.
Yeah.
And apparently a lot of Black people took their stimulus check and did something wise. Everybody's like, Black folks aren't going to do anything wise if they get some money. That's why Black folks couldn't get reparations or anything else, because they can't do anything smart. But a lot of Black people went out and started businesses while other people were closing down.
Mm-hmm.
And that was showing some bravery. It takes some courage to say, you know what, I'm going to be dependent upon whether or not I eat tonight or this week.
Yeah.
You know, so got to get over the fear.
No doubt.
And the church should play a greater role in getting people over fear, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Brother Craig, what do you think?
Yeah, so you know, it's hard to follow the gospel of Yoda, but so my favorite apostle is Paul.
Okay.
And he was big into Christ in you. And from Galatians 2:20, he says, I'm crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ in me.
Mm-hmm. That's
Right?
what he said.
And so Christ in me has to care about what's going on with people. Has to care about what's going on with the communities that I'm from, even those that I'm not from, and to try to make a difference. So the voice that I mentioned to you earlier, for example, from Moving Nashville Forward, that's doing the demonstration project for basic income.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting their money from white people, from rich white people, to do this. And they're all Christian folk from Gideon's Army. They're from that neighborhood, 37208 North Nashville. They have decided to try to make a difference. And they are explicit in their spiritual Christian views in terms of putting this money in folks' hands. I think that whether or not they are able to successfully produce an outcome that says that Nashville says, oh, I see what y'all did there. We're going to try to do this. They're putting money in folks' hands right now. So praise God for them, right? They're trying to do something. Mm-hmm. So that's a you know, kind of a direct, you know, more direct than what we might always do. But I think that is the kind of thing where we do need to stand up and make our voices heard as Christians, to say, no, I love my brother. I love my sister. We may have some differences. I don't really care about those things, but I'm trying to do something. So yes, I think it does. I think we do have a role.
Okay. Are we barking loud enough? And I do mean barking.
Yeah, well, doesn't that depend on the context though, right? I mean, so for me, it depends on the context.
Uh-huh.
So I just came out of I wish I could talk about it, but I've been working on something for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And right before we got on this call, it all came to fruition. I was the guy yelling and screaming. Good. I was the one that was literally raising hell. Mm-hmm. I raised hell until I was Jeremiah. Mm-hmm. In that context, right? Mm-hmm. So I was, you know, I couldn't stop it. It was like fire shut up in my bones. Mm-hmm. I had to do it. Mm-hmm. And everybody said, Craig, you don't have to do it like that. I said, yes, I do, because you all are not listening to me. I know what I'm talking about here. I was in this business for many years. Mm-hmm. So I understand. I know I've forgotten more about this stuff than you'll ever know. So yes, I was barking, and it worked. And it was on behalf of Christian folk too. So, and I was screaming at Christian folk, for their own benefit, and they finally saw it. So, in that context, I say yes. I mean, I feel like I needed to bark, Riley, and I could be justified. So people are still going to be upset with me because of the way that I did it. But this is going on for years. For years, I've been after this, and finally got it done. So, and then there's, as the Bible says, there's also that still small voice sometimes, right?
No doubt.
Right.
No doubt.
So it just depends on the context.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the last subject, and then I'll let you guys go. And I'm a bit disappointed because I wanted to fight. You guys are agreeing with each other. I'm mad.
We can fight. We can fight if you want us to fight.
I had foul intentions, and y'all didn't give it to me, so I'm mad. So here's the thing: education. Whose responsibility is it to educate us? And here's why I ask this question. Parents are upset because the teachers aren't teaching whatever it is that they think they're supposed to teach. Teachers are bothered because they can't necessarily teach for real because they have to stay in line with whatever the testing schedule and all of that. So everybody's upset. And in the middle of this are some people who are not getting educated. And then even adults who are still in need of some education. So whose responsibility is it to make sure that we're getting educated? In other words, I get upset when people have left certain pieces of information out, but was it their responsibility to tell me, or is it my responsibility to go and find out if I really want to know? So it's in y'all's hands.
Okay, so it sounds like you are covering two subjects, both the childhood education as well as continuing education for adults. Is that correct?
Do me a favor, John.
Yes.
For
Yes.
the benefit of everybody, why don't you share with them your educational background so that I think it's an impressive background. So I think.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. Yes, sir. Please.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So my educational background is I started off, of course, went through high school, started off college at Oakwood, had a good experience, but in fact, I had one of my first professional computer contracts when I was at Oakwood with the biology department doing an MCAT tutorial program before anybody was doing anything like what we did. Finished up at UAB, went on, worked for a while, eventually went back and got my master's degree, was in the PhD program, did not see eye to eye with my advisor. And so when I got married and my wife was looking at going to Nashville, to ex-wife now, but to work at Vanderbilt and to be under her mentor, I found a pretty good job in Nashville, so I went there and worked there for a while at that first job. It was one of those .com companies. Got laid off when that bubble burst in 2001, and then was unemployed for a little bit, got a job at Meharry doing similar to what I was doing when I was at UAB before I went to graduate school. And then eventually went to law school at Vanderbilt and graduated and passed the bar, practiced for a few years, got out of it, possibly getting back in. So yeah, that's my background.
So you've been all up and down through the educational system. That's why I was wanting everybody to understand that as you discuss it.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Also, I have several family members that are in the education field. Well, okay, my brother used to be in. My cousin just retired a couple years ago from being a principal, and her daughter is a teacher. And one of the things, my cousin was a principal in Birmingham City Schools, and at one point, she was the only middle school that was not like a charter school or magnet school that was also not on some type of academic probation or problem or whatever.
And one of the things that she said that kind of talked to her recently, and she's like, I believe in, she believed in treating her teachers right. Now, she had some teachers that were not interested in educating children, especially Black children, and she worked hard she would give them glowing recommendations when they were trying to go somewhere else, so the other principal would take them off her hands. But she would also, like during the summer months, integrate sports with her education, and the kids would jump a letter grade in math over the course of a few months, because it would be like, okay, you're playing football or basketball, you've got to calculate the area of the 3-point line area, a half circle or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so those types of things to integrate learning and everything. And so I think that there are a lot of obstacles, unfortunately, to a quality education for all of our kids. If you're talking about private school, there's the expense, although, I was in how do I put this? I heard Craig talk about the veterans. I love all my veterans. I don't approve of every war they fought in, but that wasn't their fault. But I love all my veterans. And I marched last Veterans Day parade in Birmingham. And there was a school there. It's a private Christian school that's free because they have an endowment. And, $1.2 million endowment. And I think that's wonderful. When capitalism finally pays off for me, I would like to do that for some schools.
Just can't help yourself, can you?
Gotta have a dream.
There you go.
But yeah, I one thing that that was my ex-wife said years ago, I thought was pretty profound, is there are 3 people involved in anybody's education. I'm talking about kids. That would be the child, the parent, and the teacher. And as long as 2 of them are dedicated to that child's education, whether it's the parent and the teacher, or the child and the parent, or the teacher and the parent, that child's going to get educated. And so it takes more than just, it's hard to do it by yourself. Even as an adult, to become educated, to be informed, you've got to, you can read and learn a lot, but it's also helpful to talk to people, to have exchanges like we're having. I learned things from Craig, even though he does get him a nerd. So it's
there it is.
You wanted to fight. You wanted to ask for the fight. So. But that's how you grow, So that's my thought.
Okay.
And Craig, you have an impressive academic background as well. Tell us about yourself. What's going on?
Well, so we started. The reason I asked, because that's how we started.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of walked through, my stuff.
All right.
I say, I do. I have 2 master's degrees. So I forgot that, Riley. So I have a master's in communications, master's in philosophy and public policy, and I should be finishing up my PhD. Very soon. Probably.
Very good.
Awesome.
So here's my take on education is, I look back to Carter G. Woodson and what he tried to identify for us, that and Du Bois before him, that education is a construct, especially history. When you look at history, it's a construct. So our history gets told to us usually by the victors, right? And so it's an education that we're getting in those instances when we're not taught about the fact that it was emancipated Black soldiers who formed in Nashville, Tennessee, to go up against the Confederate the Army of Tennessee pushed them back all the way to Virginia, which was the reason that Lee surrendered.
Right.
So if you don't understand that, you don't know that the winning role that we played in our own emancipation. Are you educated, or have you been indoctrinated if you don't have this information? So we've been working on this under a system of indoctrination. And so, like John's PhD advisor may have been trying to indoctrinate, and John was trying to do something different, right? So what is it? What is an education? And so from my perspective, we are not free. And education helps me to understand that I'm not free and teaches me the science of my liberation. So I've got academic credentials, but I don't count that as education. I said that, well, I guess in a sense, it's more of an education in the sense of preparing me to be to work for somebody else in this society, to play my role in society. That's what this is. So the kind of education is what John has talked about in terms of talking to people who know how to do stuff. Education is Richard saying, your feet are out of position. Your hands are not up.
Yeah.
And the reason that you keep getting hit is, that's education.
Yeah.
So what is my context for education? My context for me, the context for education is that we are not free. And I'm looking to the science of our liberation.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be a scientist, and so that's how I look at it.
Gotcha.
If that makes any sense.
All right, Craig. So we're about to have our first disagreement of the evening.
All right,
First
come on, let's do it.
There we go.
All right.
That's what Riley wanted.
Craig said that education history is taught by the winners. Well, if you lived in the South and went to a mostly white school, it was taught by the losers.
Amen. No, you got it right. It was taught by the lost cause people. The lost cause mythology.
Yes,
it was taught by the traitors and losers.
Goodness.
He's absolutely right.
I was homeschooled my 8th grade year, and we had to go through the entire. We went to page to page in every book. That was the most intense education year of my life besides law school, was 8th grade homeschool. And so when I went to academy, I already knew all the history that the teacher was trying to indoctrinate us with. And it was funny, we would have these, at first he wrote his own test, and we get the test back and I'd have a 70. Well, by the time I got through going through and showing him where he was wrong in the book, I'd have a 90 something, and my classmates would be mad because I got that question right, because we multiple choice, Like, well, that's not the right answer by the book. But he was, we didn't get much past the Civil War, and we got to the Civil War. It's like, I just want to explain that, this, it wasn't all about slavery and and a bunch of crap. But one of the good things about, there's garbage on the internet, there's good stuff. And one of the good things, I was able to go back and actually read the Southern Declarations of Secession, where they say, just like we have our Declaration of Independence for why we want to break off from Britain, and that might be crap, whatever. But they say, every one of them, this is about slavery. Now, a few of them mention tariffs, but every single one of them said slavery. But yet you got these, it wasn't about, whatever.
States' rights.
So, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I asked that question earlier is because from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, my teachers did one thing. They were all consistent in doing one thing. They were encouraging and teaching us how to think. Now
Bless you.
the
Wonderful.
grades were something that they paid attention to, but it wasn't the central focus. It wasn't about, you have to make this particular number. Now, of course, at the end, if you didn't get it, you couldn't pass. But during the course of the thing, it was about thinking and learning and understanding the information. I had that the whole time I was in school. And the reason that it's so, the reason that it's on my mind all the time is because I don't necessarily hear or see a lot of that in what we have right now.
Right. Yeah.
So from there,
The number two pencil.
right, absolutely. And so every time I would ask for some help, it was always the same thing. Figure out what you can do first. And if you just can't figure it out, then come to us and we'll help you out. From kindergarten to 12th grade, that's all I had. Is that what's going on now? If it is, I don't see it. That's why I'm asking. Who's responsible for us getting?
Oh, yeah, and that's the question.
Who's responsible for that?
Well, yeah, so this goes back to Wonder's answer to John. Really, if you have a parent involved and a student involved, the teacher may be helpful, but is not necessarily critical in that. So, my father is, he was an education, he's still alive. He was an educational psychologist. He had a PhD in it. So his job was to teach teachers how to teach.
Okay.
That's essentially what it is.
Okay.
The insights I got from him were what he did with me at home. Sorry for the camera thing.
No problem.
The insights that I got from him were, I would ask a question when I was doing my homework. How do you spell whatever? And what do you would expect he would say? Look it up. Where we had dictionary.
Look it up in the dictionary. I don't know.
Exactly. The Red Webster's dictionary. Look it up. And so now, it's funny when I have my kids around and they ask a question like that. My sister and my brother and I, we look at each other, what's dad gonna say? Look it up. So yeah, Riley, it was, it is critical thinking, and thinking skills generally are not taught the way that you probably are not being taught to everybody the way that you learned, which was fabulous. It's fabulous that you got exposed to that, and it's evident that you were exposed to that based on the way that you present yourself and you talk and the way that you think through what you're going to present and those kinds of things. So it's evident that you had been exposed to having to think through problems and to engage in critical thought. So who's responsible? I think we ultimately are, but man, so you have who has time,
Right.
to do that for my grandson, it's me, right? So I'm always, doing stuff with my grandson where I am running him through that kind of thing. Like, I wonder how the dog is supposed to get out of the fence by himself if he doesn't have hands and that kind of thing. And he's in this place. I wonder how that's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And to listen to his 3-year-old self try to explain it. So I do, but that's, I didn't even do that with my kids because I wasn't smart enough at that point. I wasn't aware of it at that point. I was trying to survive. And that's So I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to help them survive. And I wasn't really in a position to give them some developmental tools that they probably needed in some cases, in some respects. I mean, they're okay. They survived me. So maybe they were the component that was their mother and the teacher, probably helped there because I was just being honest.
So Craig, this shows we do not spend enough time talking about life because I didn't know you were a grandfather. So
Oh, sorry,
congratulations.
John.
I missed
Yeah.
that.
Oh man, very happy grandfather. He's down there in
Of
Florida.
course.
You want to see pictures?
I know.
He's down in Florida. He's 3 years old. My oldest daughter, Nicole, and my son-in-law Chaz had him. And he's the joy of my life.
Very good.
One thing while we were talking about this, that I thought about this a lot over the years, and that is there is this disconnect between how we teach and in general, not all, some schools are different, but the way most schools teach and what's expected in the real world.
Good point.
I don't know how it is on your job, Craig, but for lawyers or computer scientists or whatever, you're not sitting there trying to say, can I remember the answer to this question? You're talking to your colleague, if and when I was doing programming and we were on the clock and everything, our supervisor would be like, you know what, if you don't know the answer, you need to ask your buddy, not just sit there, not getting the job done. And yet we make education is so competitive, student against student, and they have group projects and everything, but I think that there's something that's lost in that type of structure. And I don't know what the best structure is.
Collaborative structure. Riley, I don't know how much time you have, but I want to provide an example for what John is talking about.
Absolutely, yes.
So John knows Summer Wood, who is the principal of one of the schools in the Adventist school here in Nashville. Her dissertation, I read it. People don't read dissertations. I read her dissertation. That's part of the reason I decided to go back and get my own. But what she did was to go to a school where Black boys had very low reading levels. Nashville is one of the states that has the worst performance generally of Black boys in reading. But what most people don't know is that back in the 1960s, when we were finally allowed to read, Black boys were at the highest level of reading.
Wow.
At I think it was at third grade. Then it started to trail off after third grade because people recognized what was going on. It's like, oh, they're actually smart. They're able to do this.
Yeah.
So we have to knock them down. So now we have the worst, Black boys have the worst reading competency in the nation. States like California, Tennessee, where you have Black boys who are only 10% of Black boys are reading at or above grade level. So she went into a school and she used, I won't talk about her methodology and all of that kind of thing, but I can explain what she did. This is what she did. She used a couple of tools. She took some readable books and she gave them to the kids and took them home just in case their parents or whatever adult was home also couldn't read well. And they allowed them she allowed them to ingest that material first. And as they got more comfortable, to John's point, they worked in groups and collaborated with each other as boys. Just the boys got together to understand what they were reading. And so as they began to understand more, they began to make meaning of what they were reading. And then as they gained competence in terms of their absolute ability to read, they were moved off of those things and said, what would you like to read? So they picked sports magazines and those kinds of things. And at the end of 6 months, those kids were at a deficit. They were reading 3 grade levels ahead of where they were prior to her intervention. So it's not that we don't have the capacity or the ability. It's actually the opposite. We have the greatest capacity and ability to do this. But the systems that are in place are, and this was borne out by the research that she, actually I've got one of the books here. Let me see if I can, I'm not gonna, anyway, the underlying research that she used, I have a couple of those books here because I got very interested in that. And what they found is that children are very perceptive. If you are interested in them, they know it. They also know it if you're not interested in them. Mm-hmm. And so from, I guess the national average now is like Black boys make a decision on average that they're going to drop out of school by the 3rd grade because of the way that the school is presented to them, right? Nobody cares about them. It's not about them. I'm not going to get into all the white women and all that stuff. That's a big factor. Who's in charge of discipline and the kinds of things that, but our energy is different, right? So we present ourselves a little differently in some cases, and that's not our fault. It really isn't. It isn't the fault of the boys. But so they come to understand that it's not for them, and then they check out. If you if you create a supportive environment for them to learn and you encourage them, it's like I was listening to a discussion about gospel music and how Kojic folk, they encourage those kids to sing, period. Mm-hmm. Even if they're messing up, everybody's out there, amen. They're supporting them so that when it comes time, and they practiced enough, and especially if they're talented, then they set the world on fire in terms of their music. It's the same thing with anything else. So especially with education and Black boys, you encourage them, you provide a supportive environment for them, they will flourish on average.
Gotcha. I bring this up because when I was in the 6th grade, I knew I wasn't going to college. That was without a doubt the most controversial situation that I had ever experienced with my family, because the assumption was, he's doing all this other stuff. Of course he's gonna go. But the reason that I had no interest, and this is bottom line what it was. Whatever I wanted to learn to do, I couldn't understand why I had to go through all of these steps to get it. If there's a library right there, and I just go there. If I want to be a musician or whatever it is, I'll just sit down at an instrument and just figure it out, because that had been my life the whole time. So I didn't understand anything different. My father, while he was alive my whole life, he always treated me like he knew I would figure it out. If there was something going on, he wouldn't do a lot of explaining and all that. He wouldn't even get in the way. If something would be in front of me and he just assumed, I guess, that I would just figure it out. And that's kind of the mode that I was in. So it didn't make sense to me that I have to learn these things on somebody else's timeline, or I got to get a bunch of money to figure it out, or I got to do all these steps. Just go do it. That's what you learned in my family. Figure it out. That's why I asked, who's responsible? Or whose responsibility is it for educating? That's why I asked that question. John, you want to chime in on this?
That's, wow. So that's really interesting. I had some thoughts when I heard Craig talking, and then you brought up a very interesting interesting point. I think that definitely there are a lot of avenues, and we have to pursue a lot of different avenues for making sure young people and older people have a chance of gaining knowledge. I've been involved, and we'll probably get involved again with groups that Craig is familiar with called Pathfinders, which is kind of like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts combined, where you're learning in the outdoors, and they have different honors, which are kind of like merit badges for the Scouts. And some of them are, learning about trees and flowers. Some of them are learning about plumbing and electricity and carpentry. And so, and it's done in a way that nobody's getting a letter grade, you're just getting a chance to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that is extremely important. And we have, and some of this is just people that have the knowledge taking the time to share. I mean, you can go to the library and figure it out. You might not want to try to figure out how to wire a house by yourself. It might be better if you have somebody looking over.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah, no doubt.
But I think that's important. And Craig, while it's an interesting statistic about the third grade, I know there's definitely key points in young people's lives where, Riley mentioned about, decisions made in sixth grade. There were some kids in Birmingham, I lived there before I got married, that my brother started, he was in education and he was still in school. And so he was volunteering and helping with these kids, and he got involved in our Pathfinder Club. And then they lived in projects. They were doing very well in elementary school. They were mannerable, yes, sir, no, sir, no problem out of these kids whatsoever until they went to middle school. When they went to middle school, all hell broke loose. Okay. They started getting involved in gangs. The boys did. These gangs weren't pushing girls into it, so the girls at least didn't have that problem. And one of them got suspended. And so I asked his mom one day, it's like, well, is he studying and keeping up with the schoolwork? And she's like, no, they wouldn't let him bring his books home. I was like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Obviously, the schools want the child to continue learning, right? So I went, y'all are laughing at naive me. I went to the school and I met the vice principal, this African man, and he's like, he was so supportive. He's like, oh yes, I'm so glad you wanted to help the young man, and yes, you can take the books. And I'm thinking to myself, I've got this college degree, this mother in the project, she just didn't know how to talk to these people, right? So I'm almost out the door, and the principal caught me. Black woman, and many Black women were supportive. This just was one that was not. And she's like, what do you think you're doing? I was like, well, I'm getting this young man's book so he can keep up with the studies while I that. Well, you don't know him. Let me tell you about him. He's nothing but a thug, and all he wants to be is a thug, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, what is, where's you got a Klan rope in your closet or something? What's going on? And so I was like, well, she's going on about how trouble was. I was like, well, I don't have any problems with him in our church group. Well, you don't have him all week, and da. So I didn't get the books. Eventually, he got suspended again, and they sent him to a alternative school, and his grades shot up. It was strong discipline. I don't know what it was and stuff. And I got to talk to him and his mom, and it's like, yeah, I'm doing good, but I don't like it. I miss my friends and everything. And I'm like, keep him at the alternative school till he graduates. Mm-hmm. But no, they put him back in another school. He got in trouble, eventually got expelled, and he's doing okay now, but he went through a lot. But this gets back to what Craig said a while back about caring and making sure we have to care ourselves. And then we have to make sure that if there's somebody that's in our children's way that doesn't care, that we get them out the way, in a nice Christian, legal manner. We get them out the way of whoever this is damaging our
or
children.
just backhand them. Get out of my kid's way.
No comment,
Yes, sir.
no comment.
Jesus will save me. You know, you can forgive, but I'm slapping whoever
What
it
did Jesus
is.
say? Jesus said, smite the other cheek. No, that's right, right? Smite the other cheek.
There you go.
Wow.
That's it. I mean, so, you know, for me, for my younger children, you know, Marsha is a fierce advocate for the kids. And so that is, you know, doesn't jump off like that initially. But if there's a pattern, you know, and then what we used to do, John, we would bring the whole village in. I remember one time there was somebody had said something to Emiria, Fred and Emiria's youngest. What is that boy's name? He's tall now. He's taller than I am. Evan Furman. And Devin was involved in that, or Jordan was involved in it. And so one of the white kids at school said nigger something. So the teacher is someone we suspected. This was in Madison. You know, kind of a white Christian nationalist kind of person anyway. And so, you know, I didn't want to get involved, and she didn't want me to get involved because I go right there. I go from here. So she's like, no, calm down. Let's look at it. Very wise, very prudent. And when she found out that, you know, after discovery, and the woman admitted it, you know, it's like, oh, okay, then things changed. And then when my brother-in-law, Russell, was still alive, who's a pastor, he was there. My sister-in-law, Donna, was there. My other sister-in-law, Tara, was there. Dwayne, who's a physician, was there. I got there, I was late. I walked into the whole family was there confronting this. And the kids were like, I mean, I know they had to feel a certain way about that because their family was there supporting them, right? Mm-hmm. You know, not that they were perfect all the time. They usually, you know, they were. My youngest daughter, Jordan, is more like me, and so she got into trouble a lot. But we were there to support her. Mm-hmm. You know, if she was in the right, you know, they knew that we were going to show up. Mm-hmm. So that care came from that part of it too, John. Right? So it's caring from the parents. If it's not from the school, and you know, so that, you know, that's a particular, that school has been a problem for a long time. So Madison Academy in Nashville has just been a problem. They just been a problem. Mm-hmm. But at that point we believed that was the best place that they should be. So that's, you know, we ended up fighting a lot of wars on their behalf.
Understood. Well, when you said you brought in the village, that usually solves the
they know we're gonna show up, right? They know it's not. No, we're not rolling over these kids who are not represented, whose parents can't get there.
Yeah.
You know, and what ended up happening actually is that Marsha ended up being an advocate for a lot of other kids whose parents couldn't show up. Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah. That's what ended up happening a lot, unfortunately. But so in that case, to your point, then it is our responsibility. Education is our responsibility.
Gotcha.
Like
John, Yeah.
Go ahead.
You want to add something to this, John, before we wrap this up?
I know that was it, and thank you for sharing that story, Craig. And there's a you got to battle. Unfortunately, because we still live on planet Earth with imperfect humans, you got a potential battle wherever you go. We had our battles with the good pasture, and you just. But I think the important thing that Craig, well, a lot of things important. But one of the important things that Craig pointed out is there's strength in numbers, and that gets to what you were saying from early on, Riley, is that even though we've got different leaders with different perspectives and everything, it shouldn't be that we segment ourselves in this struggle. There might be some stuff that you do that I'd be like, okay, you're on your own on that. But there might be some stuff that I do that I'm on my own on that. But we ought to be able to come together and find some commonality and some common goals, because there is definitely strength in numbers. We just have to have focus and have some idea where we're going.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I have enjoyed this, except I didn't get no fight, but it's okay. I ain't tripping. We'll get it in the next time. No problem. No problem at all. The instigator in me was not satisfied tonight, but it's cool. It's cool. No worries. Okay. No worries. So before I let you guys go, do you guys have anything that you want to promote? Is there anything going on? You guys write a book, speaking engagements, anything y'all want to let the people know about before I let you go?
Not at the moment. I will say I applaud you for what you're doing. Do you have a YouTube? Is this going to be like on YouTube or something? Or,
yes,
or how
it'll be on YouTube, it'll be on LinkedIn, and it'll
Okay.
also be on the website. Yes, sir.
Oh, I should have gotten to the light where y'all can see me then.
You good.
I applaud you in what you're doing. I've thought about doing multiple YouTube shows for different things, everything from martial arts to politics to whatever. So I don't have anything like that going on right now, but when I do, I'll definitely let you know. And I'd love to be on your show again. I'd love to talk to Craig again. I think this was a very good exchange.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. You got anything going on you want to talk about, Craig?
No, I echo John. This is good work, Riley. Enjoyed this. Enjoyed talking to John. It just seems like we fight a lot.
Oh, so I misread that. I misunderstood that.
It's just we like to argue.
I mean,
John likes to argue. John's a good arguer. He's a good arguer, and I like to argue. So I found a good opponent. When I want to fight about something, John's a perfect candidate because he's good. You want to fight with weak people. But no, seriously, no, I enjoyed this. Look forward to to seeing what your finished product is, and happy to come back if there's something you think I can add value to in the conversation. Have nothing to look for me in January, and I may have some more stuff. Something to report, I should say.
Okay, fantastic. All right, well, thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show. We'll certainly talk again very soon. You guys have a good night.
Thanks, Riley.
All right, have a good night.
Peace, y'all.